Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Northeast Hoopcast. Today, I'm joined by first-year Keene State men's basketball coach, Steven Enright. Coach, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Much anticipated, of course. And I wanted to just start, before you got to Keene State, you had a sort of a track record. One of your first jobs at URI under Dan Hurley, of course, two-time NCAA champ. How did that impact you as a young aspiring coach?
Yeah, I think, really grateful for that opportunity early in my career. I grew up about 10 minutes from the Ryan Center, URI's campus and all that. So Rhode Island native, New England guy. So definitely happy to be back here at Keene State for that reason. But, when you get to spend 2 years under, obviously the guy who's now at the pinnacle of, men's college basketball, it's an opportunity you have to be grateful for. So learned a ton in those 2 years, the, kind of beginning of my coaching career, and, was fortunate, I think, in the areas of, program building. You look at the track record of someone like Dan Hurley, starting off at the high school level, and what he was able to do at St. Benedict's, and then, from St. Benedict's to Wagner, and Wagner to URI, and URI to UConn, everywhere he's been has built an elite program, at various levels, of the game. And I try to take a lot of the things that he taught me, in building my own programs now as a head coach. So, was really fortunate for that opportunity and learned a ton, and, so happy to see his success and what he's been able to do at UConn over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was when you first got there, I think 8 wins coming off, and then jumped to the NIT against Stanford.
Yeah, so my first year was actually year 2 for Dan Hurley, so, kind of more toward the beginning of his build. So, we were maybe a 14-win team in year 1 for me, and jumped, from 14 to 23 wins, I want to say it was, and won a game in the NIT, and we're in the postseason at Rhode Island for the first time in a few years for that program, and from there, I had moved on after those 2 years, but that was a big piece of the build, and when it really started to take off for Rhode Island and for Dan and the program there, that, obviously he was able to parlay that into the UConn job. But, prior to that, took Rhode Island back to the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row, slightly after my departure. But yeah, was definitely part of the ascension there. So just learning, just how to go about that and the building blocks and piece by piece, and getting the program to a point where, it was competitive on the national level again, which, the fan base was super excited about over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And then after that URI stint you had, took a brief trip at another Division I school, VMI, and then Bridgewater took you from there. First head coaching job for you. How important was that in your career?
Yeah, I think I was fortunate, to get that job. I departed the staff at URI, for really one reason at the time. The rules were different, in Division I at the time in terms of what support staffers could do on the court actually coaching basketball. So I was involved in, a ton on the operational side there, a ton on the video side there, a lot of on-campus recruiting, and just kind of trying to be the right-hand man of both the head coach and Coach Hurley, and then the trio of assistant coaches we had those 2 years. But, I was ready to coach basketball again. So, I was, I think, 25 at the time that spring, and, had interviewed at a couple lower rung Division I's in New England to be an assistant coach there. Didn't get either job. And at that point I said, you know what? I'm going to take the first small college full-time assistant job I can get, just to get some experience, on the court coaching at a higher level, and really on the road running a recruiting effort. And that happened to be Bridgewater College, which, I hadn't even heard of before, moving, from New England to Virginia to take that job. And it was, great opportunity for me to spend a couple years there as, assistant and then associate head coach, and then moved on to VMI. So was a Division I assistant at VMI, and then was brought back to Bridgewater as the head coach in the fall of 2019. I think my first day on the job was October 1st, 2019. So, at the time I was, a young head coach. I was 29 when I got that job. So tremendous opportunity to try to build a program at a place that I was familiar in and in a league that's, at the top of Division III right now in terms of the quality of the conference. So it was really good to learn on the fly and try to take the program building experience and apply it myself, at Bridgewater.
Yeah. And then, you get to do so many different jobs at both levels, mostly at D1 at this point, and then you get to the D3.
Yeah.
And then you kind of play in the ODAC conference. Was there a surprise there? What was the competition like early on?
Yeah, I think the ODAC, I had barely even heard of it before, again, moving to Virginia. But, as far as Division III goes, the depth of that league is incredible. You just look at last year, we had two ODAC teams in the Final Four, 4 in the NCAA tournament. The league routinely has, a team or 2 or 3 at the top that is a legitimate national championship contender, and probably 5 or 6 teams every year that are at large bid to the NCAA tournament quality teams. So it's a really strong region for Division III basketball. I think part of that is the Division II landscape in Virginia is very limited. So recruiting wise, it's very much kind of a 1 or 3 situation. Whereas in New England, you have a lot of kids that could end up Division II and on scholarship in those situations. So it really makes the league very deep and very high quality, but, great learning experience. I mean, Bridgewater was a job that I knew when I took it was going to be a build. And it was going to take time, I think competing in that league where you maybe don't have the history of recent winning that, the top half of that league has, and trying to chip away at it, climb and get to the top half and establish competitiveness, was something that we were able to do there. And that was fun to go through that with those guys. I mean, it was definitely a build. It was definitely a process, and the process was not finished when ultimately I ended up leaving the job, but, was proud of the progress we made there and we'll be rooting for that program from afar for a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned a little bit into that progress that you made.
Yeah.
Of course, you finished 16-10 a year ago. Their best overall record since the 04-05 season.
Yeah.
From 2019 to last year, what were some of the key factors that led to the gradual increase every year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I got better certainly, but it took a little while for us to establish normalcy. I think if you think about the timing, I got hired there, October 1st, 2019. So at the time, 2 weeks until we started practice, there was only 12 players on the roster.
Wow.
4 of those guys were seniors, and it was, really too late to recruit. So, we had been picked to finish last in the conference 13-team league, so 13th to 13. Finished 9th in that first year, graduated that group of seniors that were kind of our best players on that team, and then had to try to reset the entire roster. And then if we all remember what happened in the winter of 2020, it was COVID. So My first 18 months there were a little wonky, but, still a good experience and got our feet underneath us. And I would say that 21-22 season was the first, somewhat ordinary year we had, with our staff and our players and guys that fit our vision. And we're still kind of in that middle to top of the bottom third of the league that year, but won a playoff game for the first time in, I think it was 7 years, won a conference tournament game in the first round. And then the following year, finished in the top half, finished in 6th of 13 in 22-23, which was the first time we'd finished there at Bridgewater in, over a decade. And, then last season, really were maybe a win or 2 away from being in the at-large pool, honestly. We finished in a 3-way tie for 5th, had some really good wins, and, did it with, starting 2 freshmen and a sophomore. So thought that, we could push through that and get ourselves in that conversation. Unfortunately, didn't finish quite the way I would have liked, but set the groundwork for, I think, that program to take the next step. And Mike Munchko, the guy who replaced me at Bridgewater, is a good friend of mine, known him forever. All those guys stayed, didn't lose any guys to transfer. lost 2 to graduation, but didn't lose any to transfer. So I think the expectations internally and externally for that Bridgewater College team going into the 24-25 seasons are high. And I think those guys can get over the hump this year, and happy to be a small part of building the foundation there. But, you always try to leave things better than you found it, and I think we were able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and I like that. Leave things better than you found it. And then not to mention in that last season, you played 4 ranked teams, including Virginia Wesleyan, who you were able to beat.
Yeah.
And then before eventually falling to, was it Ferrum in the first round?
Yeah, no, that was a tough one, man. And kind of tells you the depth of the ODAC. That Ferrum team, we beat them twice in the regular season, but both wins required overtime. And that team actually finished 10th of 13 in the league, and were really talented and had I want to say an identical record to us, 16-10, somewhere in there, because they ran through their non-conference slate. But, the margin for error in a conference like that really thin. And, unfortunately we didn't get it done that night, but, good team, and they were able to advance in that first round game.
Yeah. And, from your URI to your VMI in Bridgewater, anywhere else you might have been, what were some of the experiences that helped shape your coaching philosophy?
That's a great question. I've been fortunate enough to, as an assistant coach, work for 6 different head coaches at all 3 levels of college basketball. So got my start under a pair of, New England legends, including a guy in Phil Rowe that has ties to Keene State, was head coach at Keene State as they transitioned from Division II to Division III before departing and taking the UNH job. He actually gave me my first job in college basketball as a volunteer assistant back in 2011 at Endicott College. So really super green, but willing to work, and learned a lot from him. Still in touch with him now. Then worked at Mount Ida College for a little while for Rico Cabral, another great coach, and then got a Division II opportunity down in North Carolina, Pfeiffer University, then the URI, then Bridgewater, like we talked about, and then VMI, and then became a head coach after that. So you're always, if you're fortunate enough, like I am at a young age, to work for 6 different guys, that you're going to take something you like from all 6, and you're going to take something you might do differently situationally from all 6. So I think any head coach in the country at any level of college basketball at one point in his life was an assistant coach with no head coaching experience. So you're going to draw from everybody you work for to try to form your own philosophy. But yeah, I think, offensively, I've always kind of aligned a lot with Dan Earl, who I worked for at VMI, who's, one of the best offensive coaches in the country. Defensively, going to take a lot from Dan Hurley, how to recruit. You really learn that from a lot of other assistants, honestly, I worked with. If you think about some of the assistant coaches I worked with at URI, some became head coaches, some are, high-level guys now. Preston Murphy's at Alabama right now on staff there. Dave Cox became the head coach at Rhode Island after Dan Hurley's departure. He's, the associate head coach at Maryland now. Luke Murray is a guy who is stuck with Dan and been, one of his key guys at UConn now during this run. So when you're around those guys, you kind of learn how to shape a recruiting philosophy and how to figure out recruiting efforts. And then you learn a lot on the fly as you go. I've been lucky enough to have worked in different regions, which I think is really important for young assistant coaches. And I tell my staff, that I've had, as a head coach now, before you move them on to better jobs and that sort of thing, is getting to a region that's not necessarily home for you is really good to do, before you've got, a family and kids and a mortgage and all that stuff, and you can kind of go. I'm a New England guy, but I got down to North Carolina in my early 20s, and then spent 9 years in Virginia, so I think recruiting wise, it's good to be able to have your hand in different regions and be able to have a pulse. And I think that has helped us here at Keene State with some of the transfers we brought in. We have some transfers from the Mid-Atlantic and the South, which, maybe not necessarily would have been guys that Keene State would have targeted in the past. New England is absolutely still going to be our bread and butter, but when you get into transfer recruiting, you're going to want to have connections in different regions because those guys are going to be a little bit more, probable immediate impact and kind of know what you're getting type guys. So I think using your connections to be active with transfers is a key piece, and then being able to have your hand in different regions, drawing from previous experience is really important as you're trying to, construct the best roster you can to win a championship.
Yeah. That was a lot there, but definitely the region thing, something people don't think about, You can pull them from, if you come up from here, like you said, from Virginia, you get those types of guys, and I believe one of them played for Hampton-Sydney a couple years
Ryan
back.
Blakey.
So.
He's a DC area guy, DMV guy, PG County guy. So, Blakey's actually an interesting story. Ryan Kane recruited him here out of high school, didn't get him, but, talked to him when he was in high school, which Ryan already knew what Keene State was. And we do have a national brand right now, and we totally anticipate that's going to continue. So why would we not take advantage of that? Kids that are in D3 circles, like a kid like Blakey who, played at Hampton-Sydney his freshman year and was a rotation guy on a really good team as a year one guy down there 2 years ago. Like, he knows what Keene State is, so we can take advantage of that. New England's absolutely going to be the bread and butter for high school kids, and I think it's a little bit more difficult to get out of region for high school kids with just limitations in terms of time, staff, and budget that you're going to have at the Division III level. But with transfers, I think you can kind of let that thing rock and let the name sell itself, for older guys. So that's something we're able to do. And Ryan's a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. And I believe, 18 points a game at Southern Maryland last year.
Maryland. Yeah.
So we could get into some of the other transfers that I've seen on the page. Chaikin from Southern Connecticut. Talk to me about him for a little bit.
Yeah. So Leo, he's a Vermont kid actually. Originally, older guy. He left. He was at Rice Memorial, which is a great program out of Vermont. Left there and reclassified at Worcester Academy. So played in the NEPSAC, which, people in New England basketball circles know how high quality that is. So, Leo was at Southern Connecticut State for the last 3 years, actually, and, played rotation minutes for them for 2 years, started 6 games as a freshman. So, a guy like that, he has real game experience at a high level for a good program and a great coach in Scott Burrell. Actually redshirted this past year as a junior, so he's got 2 years to play. But I think the value in taking a guy like Leo is not only his game experience, playing at the Division II level, at the scholarship level, but also it's every single day, he had to practice against guys that were really good and guard guys that were really good. And I think Leo's strength is on the defensive end and rebounding and kind of his positional versatility and his athleticism. So getting a guy like him that's had to sit down and guard the best offensive players at a place like Southern Connecticut for 3 years in practice is only going to help us with a defensive mentality going forward. So, he's a guy that I think could really flourish here at Keene State over the course of the next 2 years. Yeah.
And Southern Connecticut championship appearance last year against SNHU. So he brings that mindset, that championship mindset as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then any other transfers to look out for this year?
Yeah, I think it's not just all about the transfers. I think it's and we can rattle down all the guys we've got, but I think the biggest story for our season is going to be the infusion of old and new. And so far that's going great, and we're 5 practices in and it's a little bit of the honeymoon phase and it's hugs and high fives all around. And we want that to continue. I haven't necessarily dictated player roles yet and handed out minutes yet. So we're going to have to survive that. But, we're deep, we have, I think, a pretty well-constructed roster. I think, when I got here at the beginning of May, it was really obvious that there are known commodity, high-level guys, really good players and really good teammates, in the group of returning guys. But I think if you look at last season, finishing the season with 10 guys was hard, I think, just to practice and prepare. at the level that you need to, and that's nobody's fault. Honestly, I think the team last year was obviously a national championship contender, coming off back-to-back Sweet 16s. Coaching staff did a great job. The players that finished the season did a great job. I think for us, it's just about, okay, like, where can we fix the places we're deficient? And I think depth and balancing your classes in terms of a roster construction was what we needed to do. So, we graduated Jeff Hunter, who, two-time All-American, just a monster player and an awesome human being and a great leader and one of the best to ever do it at Keene State. And then you graduate a guy like Alonzo Linton, who was just a really good piece, that could fit into a lot of different areas, positionally, and was versatile and athletic and a good teammate, all that stuff that you see, from the outside looking in as you're trying to figure out what you need to do next from our end. But, and we knew we were returning, Octavio and Mason and Nate and Spencer, as known commodity guys who played big roles on really good teams. And then also some talented guys that maybe are looking to play more as they get older, guys like Wes Odiasi and Liam Johnston, who played, some rotational minutes last year. And then you look at Isaac and Steve, who as freshmen last year maybe didn't sniff it a ton, but, guys make big jumps from freshman to sophomore year, so they're certainly in the mix, but that's still only 8 human beings, so we had to go get some guys. There were 4 freshmen committed to us prior to my arrival. I'm certainly not the type to pull the rug out on guys, so wanted to make sure we shored up those commitments and, got to know those kids quickly. So that gets us to 12 human beings. Well, all right, where are we deficient? 12's not enough. 1, 2, Liam was the only junior, and our sophomore class had 3 guys, so a little thin there as well. So we went out and targeted transfers with 2 or 3 years to play, for 2 reasons. One is to balance those classes and give us more depth and give us, another batch of good players to make things competitive. But 2, just to, when we graduate those 4 known commodity seniors, we're not going to be in rebuild mode, this time next year, because we're going to have another crop of older guys that, if we do our jobs, has infused really well with the returning group from this year that have been under, our coaching staff for a year, that are going to be ready to go and keep carrying the torch. So that was all kind of by design. So yeah, you mentioned, Leo and Ryan. We took Mitch Shettles from Coast Guard, who was a second-team All-NUMAC kid as a sophomore, elite shot maker at this level, 45% from 3 on a high volume of attempts, was the main guy offensively down at Coast Guard last year. So just another shot maker. Took Josh Williams, who, another out-of-region kid, Charlotte, North Carolina, just tough, like really good point guard, steady, and he's got 3 years to play. Came from Division II Flagler, another really good program. And then we took, a pretty well-traveled big guy who's really talented and looking for an opportunity in Kai Kosmeyer, who started his, career Division I at Bryant and then played the last 2 years at Anderson University in South Carolina Division II. So all these guys that we just mentioned have 2 or 3 years to play. And then the freshman class, the 4 guys that were committed here all had really good high school careers around New England. And then we added a 5th guy late, 6'9", 6'10", and has a ton of upside in Dennis Wainana. So now we're balanced. We got 5 freshmen. We've got actually 6 freshmen now, because we had another guy walk on and make the team. So we have 6 freshmen. We've got, I think it's 4 sophomores and 5 juniors and 4 seniors. Like, that's perfect. That's what you want, and I think no matter how you slice it, practices are going to be super competitive, and the group is infusing really well right now. So we have to continue that as we go, and we're going to put the best guys on the floor we can to give us the best chance to win every game we play.
Yeah, and that's awesome. That's not good at quick math, but like 18 guys, you'd say?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned it's a big step from last year, especially you in your first season, getting that many people, having that much depth throughout the freshman through senior, and just going to make things competitive. My question is, those group of core guys, the Spencers, the Nates, the Masons, the Octavios, what was their culture like, and how do you see them, passing kind of the Keene State culture onto those younger guys?
Yeah, I think if you look at our culture here, that has overall been like a net positive for a long time. I think on the court, in between the lines, like these guys have been dialed in, man, for a long time. It's just a really good player-led stuff from before we're allowed to have them. Like these guys are playing pickup, they're lifting on their own, they're running on their own, like they're holding each other accountable that way. And I did not create that. I inherited that, so Dave and then Ryan before Dave and Rob before Ryan, like those guys created that, and Phil before Rob. It's like that's been here, for a long time. So those guys know the deal. I think we're, culturally it's we got to practice a little harder, which I think would be easier to do with the depth and the numbers. And then we have been so far, so that's going to continue. And then just outside the lines, like how can we be even more active in the community? How can we be a little bit better academically? How can we be, a great representation of what it means to be a Keene State student and a Keene State Owl? Like that's the stuff that we're really trying to hammer down, this time of year, and just doing the right things off the court all the time and being the best representation of yourself and the program as we go. And one of the first things we did, even just before we grabbed these transfers, grabbed an extra freshman and kind of started to infuse it all, we stuck the 4 seniors and Liam Johnston, the oldest non-senior returner, in a leadership group, and they meet with me, periodically to just talk about the team and moving it forward and hey, what do we need to be doing from a player-led standpoint? What does the team need from me? What does the team need from the rest of the coaching staff, just to roll it forward? And I think that's been successful, and it's given those guys ownership of the team, because a player-led team is always going to be stronger when it matters than a coach-led team, and we want those guys to see that and take ownership of it. And so far, they're doing a great job in that area.
Yeah, and how different is that coming into Keene with that established culture and established, Sweet 16, so back-to-back years?
Yeah.
How different is that coming in here versus Bridgewater a few years ago?
Oh, it's night and day, man. I like, and this isn't, meant to be negative. It's just reality of the situation is this is a destination program for recruits. It's a program that's had a ton of success under multiple head coaches. This is a program that's produced All-Americans, and this is not a rebuild whatsoever. Walking in here, like there are extremely high expectations that are warranted, with what we're returning and what we have, coming in and what the team hopes to accomplish, this upcoming season. So my job here was not to bulldoze the whole thing and start again and say, oh, we got to do this my way, but no, my job is to infuse and fill the cracks and figure out where we're deficient and fix those deficiencies and try to highlight our strengths and make them even stronger. Like that's my job in this situation. Whereas Bridgewater, I got hired into very much a rebuilding situation, and you're going to have to start from ground zero, and just institutionally a place that had not experienced a high volume of basketball success in recent memory, and you're trying to establish something that people can be proud of. So it's just a totally different starting block. But either way, we're ready to do what we do, and I'm excited about our coaching staff. I'm excited about the people in the room, and again, it just comes back to like we just need to infuse it all, because if we do infuse it all, I think our ceiling this season is extremely high, and ultimately it's our job collectively to get us to reach our potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that's a perfect segue into this year's schedule.
Yeah.
First glance at it from me personally, toughest I've seen since I've been here.
Yeah.
You got NESCAC teams,
Yep.
Middlebury, Tufts, recent rivalries that Keene State's had, and then you add Connecticut College, who they played there last year, and Williams, and they got like an invitational early on. How can playing those teams, especially early, benefit from you?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think you want to play the best teams you can play, and particularly with, you have NCAA tournament aspirations, and to advance in the NCAA tournament like we do, you want to prepare yourself with NCAA tournament caliber opponents in the non-league. You want to, hold your team to a high standard. You want to experience travel. Like we're going out to Wisconsin to play WIAC teams. WIAC's a top 3 or 4 league in the country pretty much every year. I wish we were going in November, not December. It's going to be cold up there, but we'll be all right. We'll roll out there and go get 2 wins, hopefully. So, I think the schedule's constructed in a way that's just going to prepare us to peak at the right time. And we have to understand collectively that we have no nights off. Like we want to maintain where we've been in the Little East Conference. We want to repeat as champions again. And in the non-league, we want to put our best foot forward to try to put ourselves in the best position possible to be, in an advantageous situation in March, when the NCAA tournament rolls around. So I'm excited. The guys are excited. I think we got a good way about us right now. I think we got a good spirit about us right now. But, we're certainly not hiding from that schedule. We're going to go attack it. And, I'm confident in our group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you play in Wisconsin, it's Wisconsin lacrosse and Oshkosh.
Yep.
Oshkosh, 2019 champions, Elite 8 members a year ago.
Yep.
Lacrosse, good program. Numerous NCAA appearances, in that conference, up there with the ODAC in Division III.
For sure.
And then a couple of invitations. I mentioned the Williams one as well as the one in Wisconsin.
Yep.
What are the benefits of those playing back to back?
I think, when you get to postseason play, you're going to have to play back-to-back, so you might as well get used to doing that now. But, and experience in travel and experience in playing on the road and playing back-to-back games on the road against really quality opponents is something that we're looking forward to. Again, the schedule is meant to challenge. It's a really difficult schedule in a positive way. So we're looking forward to throwing our best punch at it.
Mm-hmm. And now, moving into LEC play, are there any particular programs that you're looking out for, or just trying to do your own thing?
I think I'm most concerned with us, but it's a game by game situation in conference play. And despite maybe some teams being kind of more perennial contenders versus others, it doesn't matter. It's a new year. I'm new to the LEC, so I have to learn new opponents. And, frankly, I don't care, win or lose, what we did last year or the year before in the LEC. It's a new year, and we got to take it one game at a time and be the best version of Keene State basketball every time we step out on the floor, and that's going to be our goal. And I think if we do that and we worry about that and our own internal goals, I think people like the results when we get into conference play. Yeah,
and of course, back-to-back champions of the LEC, going on 4, hopefully.
Yep.
Has never been done by any team. That's where I'm going to leave that. Don't want to get too into that. But motivation, you can use that as motivation. The Final Four from a year ago, Keene State lost to Guilford by 22. Not the best game. How do you implement that type of motivation into this squad?
I think it's an extremely motivated squad because you have the 4 seniors that, hey, this is your last punch. You've had a lot of guys here that have, in that senior class, kind of plus Liam, that I'm going to be their 3rd head coach in 3 years, that have persevered through that, and they've stayed at Keene State because of what Keene State basketball is, and how good a program it is and what it means to have that jersey on. So, I think at the end of the day, we have an extremely motivated group, and if you're not motivated on October 1st, then you're doing the wrong thing, So as a basketball person, basketball player, coach, whatever it is. I think our guys are absolutely have a chip in their shoulder, and we talk about, hey, this program's got to try to maintain where we've been in the LEC first. And don't take anything for granted and be the best versions of yourself. And our team's got to be the best version of itself every time we take the floor so that we are in position to be back in the NCAA tournament. And then after that, it's can we get out of that second weekend? It hasn't been done here, and our guys talk about that. And the last 2 years, the team's lost 6 games combined in the last 2 years. It's been an extremely successful team. It's also ended not the way we would like it to end, in the Sweet 16 against really good teams, and I think for us now, it's really just about, okay, where can we fix our deficiencies, when you get to the national stage and throughout the season to put ourselves in best position to get over that hump. And that in itself is going to be extremely motivating for a locker room. And I know that's on our guys' minds. So, we're going to practice like it every day. And that's ultimately where you prepare yourself to win is on the practice floor.
Mm-hmm. And quite a few times you've mentioned these deficiencies. Where do you see the deficiencies in this team?
Yeah, I think, this team, you're not sure. It's just, okay, when you look at where do we need to patch things up, I think it's depth, which we did the best we could to address. And I think, there are some areas that we could get a little bit better defensively. And we're going to have to play a little bit different defensively this year without a guy like Jeff anchoring it. And I think we were prepared for that. So, the deficiencies are small, but every team has deficiencies and I don't care if you're undefeated, there's something deficient somewhere. And, our job is to try to address that and turn something that might be a little bit deficient into a strength. And any coach will tell you the same thing, whether it's a returning coach or a new coach going into a new year. It's about getting better at the things that might hurt you.
Awesome. And kind of into this year and the future, where do you see this group going this year?
Well, this year, right now, I'm worried about today's practice. We go at 6, so trying to take it one thing at a time and installing some things right now. We're working on, some pressure packages today that we haven't done yet. So that'll be new practice 6 for us today. But yeah, where do we see ourselves going this year? I mean, I think the group is confident that there's nobody we can't beat. But I think there are variables that come throughout a season that, you don't want to make those grandiose statements. You just want to worry about where your feet are and worry about being the best team we can be today, at practice. And it's always about the process, not about the results. And I know that sounds cliche, but we need to be worried about our process, not, all right, let's worry about, okay, we're going to win X number of games. We're going to win X number of championships. We're going to go this far in the dance. It's not about that. It's about, okay, today on October 1st, let's be better than we were last Friday, which was our last practice.
Mm-hmm. And it's when you have a team that's trying to get to this next level like Keene is, it's all methodical every
100%.
step of the way. Something that Coach Kane was great at. Most methodical guy.
Absolutely.
Every game after, it was just a monologue, he would say in the interviews. It was hilarious. So, that just about does it for us today. Keene State opens up their season at Western New England. Anything?
No, I mean, just for anyone listening to this, we appreciate your support. Hope to see a packed gym this year at home games and, be behind this group because this group's, a really good group and really good group of kids. And again, those seniors throwing their last punch as well as some new faces. I think when we do infuse it all, it's going to be a fun product to watch. So keep supporting us and we appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Coach.
Thank you.